So hello, and I guess I'll wait. This is certainly not anticipated by anybody. I usually don't do live streams on Tuesday. But I was kind of inspired to do a live stream on to do a little discussion on UFOs. I just finished watching Richard Dolan, who live streamed. His live stream probably ended maybe 15 minutes ago. And Richard Dolan is somebody I consider a responsible UFO investigator. Hello, Elephant. And so I appreciate the work that people like Richard Dolan do. And what he did tonight was recount a lot of historical, modern historical, let's say 20th century encounters with I guess, various militaries from around the world, but I think he's focused largely on U.S. military encounters, especially in jets with UFOs. And I noticed that just before I started my stream, CW started streaming, but he's doing one of his music streams. So I thought, oh, gee, he might be providing a good musical backdrop for a conversation on UFOs, where you could, not only participate here, for those who would, who might find the subject interesting. I know a big part of CW's. Hello, La Gata Blanca. Thank you for subscribing. Yeah, UFOs. I don't feel UFOs are a very Gnostic discussion. But I thought maybe I might open up a discussion about, first of all, why. Hello, Darcy. Why I think, why from a Gnostic perspective, UFOs are a subject of lesser importance than the challenges that are facing us. Because we have, I've like the, Gnostics are focused, Telestai especially, have an aim, and the aim is to be a well-balanced human animal, and of course, some entertainment is part of our restoration. Hello, BB Blog. Yeah, that's what I was suggesting, BB, that CW could provide the musical backdrop for this conversation. And this way here, each person would have would have the people who were logged in to their live stream, because I think you could be logged into two, unless maybe only the one you're chatting in is the one you get registered in. I don't know, nor do I care. I care about good discussions. Okay, well, what's coming in my emails? Oh, Walter Bosley is live now. Oh my, so I'm live, CW is live, and Walter Bosley is live. Well, I'm just, again, this isn't a competition, and I don't know how long this will go. And if I get to the subject, it might go well. Let me light my cigarette. So nice and warm. I still don't have any. I still have been unable to figure out how to get my heating oil, and so the rest of the house is quite cold. It's around freezing here, but this room is my little paradise, my little sacred and safe place. Hello, Enjoy Being. Yeah, Max Egan. Well, Max Egan. Max Egan has had, to me, the awakening, the proper awakening. Like, what do we do? Well, Max Egan has been, to me, a correctly diagnosing the problem and offering, some solutions. And it's all about consciousness, and it's about walking our talk. It's one thing to complain about a system; it's another thing to support it while one complains about it. But anyway, I'm gonna let him do that. He does it very well every week. Yeah, I have a little oil-filled heater, and I like them because they're quiet And it has 3 settings. It has 600 watt setting, a 900 watt setting, and a combined setting of 1500 watts. And then it has a thermostat that runs from off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So right now I have it on a setting of 600 watts at the maximum setting. When I go to sleep, I'm able to get away with around a 2, 2.5, 3 setting on the colder nights. So it works, and it's quiet. Having, even I'm not big on white and pink noise, because the word noise is still in there, and it is noise. It might be preferable noise in certain cases. I sometimes made use of that when I had a TV in my environment, to use something to mask that programming. So UFO. So anyway, Richard Dolan did a really good live stream tonight discussing UFOs, but largely, again, from kind of a technological aspect, the nuts and bolts. But one of the conversations, and it even went back, there were some years ago when I was still on the Goldfish Report, if I recall correctly, we had Randy Kramer on, telling, if you know Captain K's story, you would kind of know probably what he covered. But then we got into a little after show conversation, and it was kind of like, what would you if you had an encounter with somebody on one of these craft? What would you want to ask them? And different people would ask, this, that, and I said, I'd want to ask them, what brings them here? Like, basically, what are you doing on my planet? What brings you to my planet? And what is your business? I'm asking you as a sovereign of this planet. And if you arrive in that craft, you ain't sovereign. And if you lived here once upon a time, well, you've vacated, and now you're coming back. So now you got to discuss to the people who have their feet on the ground. What's up? That's what I want to know. I would want to know, what is your business on our planet? And you only would come up with that question if you realized you are a sovereign on this earth. One will not come up with that question unless one has placed oneself as a sovereign of this earth. Okay, I'll experiment. All I have to do is press a button here. And yeah, so maybe now I am on mono. Maybe I forgot to hit that switch. I've been doing recording, and there's different. I use my mixer differently for recording than I do for broadcasting. I broadcast in mono. I record in stereo when I'm trying to break up tracks. Hello, Saroth. So like, one of the interesting things for me, as a sovereign of the earth, and that's kind of a big part to me of being Gnostic, and if not Gnostic, then it is certainly part of planetary tantric Gnosticism, or I don't like to use ism, Gnostic practice, or the Telestic practice. And it's one of the things that I only have a single. No, mine is unidirectional cardioid, and I'm looking at them. I know where I got this right. The only thing is, I don't. I can only rely on what the incoming is, and whether or not I have stereo or mono. In one case you'll hear me if you're wearing headphones, you'll hear me in both, and in the other case you'll hear me in just one. I try to set it up for both. And but again, listening to Richard Dolan is one thing. Participating, or at least reading, and occasionally putting something into the chat is another. And I just, humans are an imaginative, so that we're also curious, the human animal. But there's different kinds of certain kinds of curiosity will result in data of utility and other kinds of curiosity will end up in, excess data. Data that might have, individual applicability, but Gnostics are thinking from a planetary perspective, from an Earth perspective. We are aware that we have a history that was much more paradise-like and much more balanced, especially with regard to the sexes, less warlike, if not basically war. There's difference between skirmishes and tribal-level bar battles and organized war. Nobody, only a real psychopath, spends money on weaponry for a bar fight. But I don't want to get off on that subject. So anyway, there's a natural understanding of who we are on this earth, who we, the human animal, is on this earth. The Gnostic perspective, or at least a Telestic perspective, places one in a very powerful position in the galactic cosmology because of the late forming of the planet Earth, the later, one could call it an updated genomic package delivered to the Earth, as opposed to the earlier forms of Anthropos in the galaxy. We're the place to watch. And we, the human animal, is the species, the anthropic species of the galaxy, to keep an eye on. As you're saying, BB, hello, meandering. It was natural, it was wonderful. It's right there in our genetic memory, and it's not that far back. And that's the other thing. History, both secular and holy, is playing with the timeline. It's creating a psychological perception of the bad old days or the bad new days and how long they've been around. And as BB said, it was natural, it was wonderful. We can remember that. Remembering our past lives, for me, is more important to understand what kind of environment we were in rather than who we were. It's like, what were we then? Hello, sunshine on Sophia. So UFOs. UFOs, I think one of the reasons why, at least from this Gnostic's perspective, why UFOs are low on the interest level is because of we are not ready to represent as a species on this planet. The average nation is no longer even set up to represent as a nation because of the things like the UN and other global bodies. And global bodies that are not set up for global interests as far as the human animal goes. Global perspective set up by a few who happen to have a global network, a coordinated global network. We the people have we have the internet. The only thing that's not coordinated about us in the internet is us. We are having a difficulty with coordinating with each other. And part of that is a lack of original thinking. So what happens is we come with the thinking of others, and then we get into like little intellectual battles about what this person said and this person said, and that we believe what they said, rather than into like some, coming with our own opinion that we could find the common ground on. There really seems to be an approach to information about subjects that many people kind of use the nit comb on. And rather than agreeing that there might be something in that hairy mass that we don't want in there, we just kind of, we don't comb through. We don't look for what's common. But, and the other thing, there's also, to me, there's a fascination with technology in the postmodern human. Hello, Sandy says. That the postmodern human is a human that is in denial of its mystic nature. That's woo-woo. It's not real. It's not grounded. Of course, for me, that realm is the ultimate ground. That's the sacred ground. As far as source ideas. Yeah, it is the common ground. And, so one of the things that I do, and I'm standing my ground, and somebody, apparently Richard was standing his ground, and somebody goes, oh, I really gotta love somebody who stands their ground. And I was encouraged by that, because I am standing my ground. I'm standing, a telistic perspective, a planetary tantric Gnostic perspective of, it's kind of hard to be on the earth with different cosmology, with vastly different cosmologies, and one that is giving and open-ended and participatory with power shared, and another one that is run on debt. A system that starts out, that just tells us that from the very beginning, we owe some creator a debt because we like fruit. That we start off with a creator that doesn't offer us everything. Says, oh, you're in the setting, but you can't have that. That's not how a Gnostic imagines themselves on this earth and in creation. And that cosmology sets the tone for how we walk on this earth and how we might regard events that unfold from the heavens, how we hold wisdom of the heavens as opposed to the wisdom of the earth. And Sophia means wisdom in Greek. And when it comes to the differences, what are those differences and why do we have those differences? Do we know? Do we actually have a gnosis on our own, holding on to certain cosmological principles? Like, in other words, do we understand, when we do discover differences, do we even understand why they're there? I mean, we're living on the same earth. And the differences on how we got about to be here, and like, what is our relationship to the earth? Where's our relationship to the cosmos? Where's our relationship to the various beings that we're told about and have wanted to give us instruction or command an allegiance? where we owe a third party something rather than we only owe each other something. And obviously, the sacred relationship we have with the earth that provides everything. I'd like to think we sharpen one another, Marcy, but when we see hurt feelings, that's not sharpening, that's chipping. And I'm all for sharpening a blade. Chipping blades, we're starting to lose some metal there. Hello, Connie. When we look at, books like Riane Eisler, Chalice and the Blade, and we look in on how, when we look in on how the human species was coexisting with the earth in those days, and the quality of life. No, there were no iPhones, but there was quality of life. I forgot where I was going with that. Hello, Connie. I got it from here. Complex. Sharpen one another. Yeah, that's good. I like that, Darcy. When we look back into the sane world of what looks to be a few thousand years ago, the only debt there ever was to each other. The agreements we made, there were no rules other than the ones we made for each other. If we had quote-unquote laws in our area, they were ones that we agreed to abide to. Did everybody agree? No, but if you have a functioning group that says this is the way we're going to act with each other, and you have a few outsiders, you say, okay, well, bring what you got. Very often you'll find the dissenters have the least to offer. And if they have a lot to offer, then they can correct by their example. But again, coming back to UFOs, dealing with non-sovereigns, people who do not call the earth their home, to me is a sovereign issue. And and it happens, once again, I look at the earth like I look at the human body. I see the nations as unique. I see, the various genomes and the cultures that go with them as unique. Just as I see the cells in the heart as unique from the cells in the liver, or the cells of the stomach lining, or the cells of the kidney. Unique organs with their own ways for operating in a greater organism, which in the case, this example would be the human body. If we extrapolate the human body to an earth or a planetary level, we see the nations as organs. They're not made to all be one cell. They're not made to all have one function. But they're all made to function together as one whole. So this is why I don't have an issue with with nationalism with regard to a national identity and a culture. I consider that healthy. I consider that an organ, knowing that it's an organ. An organ as in an organ in the human body. But then there has to be the coordination. So there is a global coordination that needs to happen, but it needs to happen at the organic or body level, not at the possessed level. The current machinations of a new world order or a global order by the few of the many, that's like a mind virus attempting to occupy the system's control of an organism. Hello, Shannon Kling. And it's this nuance and the ability to hold two concepts simultaneously in the abstract, which is what our intellect is for, to hold ideas in the abstract, in the unmanifest, so that we can coordinate them well enough abstractly to manifest them. And I really feel that the unmanifest global coordination amongst nations has an example of manifestation in a healthy human body. Because the human body could also be used for like autoimmune diseases. And autoimmune diseases have psychological and energetic roots. I'm not saying they can't be triggered by outside agents. But even putting harmful outside agents in our body is kind of a form of immune system dysfunction. Hello, Christopher. And I wrote two things down just prior to going on. And yeah, it ties in somewhat, both of them, with the UFO thing. I want to see if I can work them in instead of just jumping in. See, the thing also is for me, the big picture is UFOs. If they originate not from this planet, or even if they once were from this planet and then abandoned the planet, they gave up a right. And I feel that, that right could be renegotiated, but it has to be negotiated with the interested party. The interested parties are the humans, animals with their feet on the ground. Ants have more of a say of what goes on this planet than somebody not of this planet. Time for us to bring in a little Native American concept of all my relations. Our relations are all the living things on this planet. And some of those living things are not as obvious as other. The wind is often not regarded as a living thing. Fire is not regarded as a living thing. Water, earth, these are also alive. These are also our relatives. And they're the relatives at home. They're not. And so, again, if some of these UFO types were once of the earth, they'd be relatives, but they left the homestead. And if they want in on the homestead again, well, those who have kept the homestead up just want to make sure that this is for real. Sarah asked an interesting question, and I will attempt to do some justice to it, because I think it's important, and especially important because I've heard it from a question of kind of that sort from somebody who represents Gnostics, and that's Miguel Connor on his Aeon Gnostic Bite radio YouTube, a channel I'm subscribed to. I like Miguel Connor. But when Miguel Connor is what I would kind of refer to as a Nagha Gnostic. You know, his reference for cosmology is the Nag Hammadi texts, which are not in any way pristinely Gnostic, not in the least. Yeah, from the frigid dystopia of Chicago. You know, he's kind of from what I would see. The Nagha Gnostics are a much later and corrupted form of Gnostic thought. And I won't even say that in my opinion. It's so obvious to me because of the mix of cosmologies. The Sophianic narrative is a unique narrative. The Abrahamic narratives, and especially with their more esoteric and angelic content, is another narrative. It's a completely different narrative. And when one reads the Nag Hammadi texts, one sees a stew of narratives. And so, anyway, so by the time, and here's how I can tell how late in Gnostic thought the Nag Hammadi texts are, which are, again, they're from the AD centuries. How long ago that was, that is a question for debate. For now, they're being called amongst the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, whenever that AD was. I'm quite sure it was 2 or 3 centuries after whoever the Christ figure was died, whenever that was. And it's totally flamenco as a number, I won't burden anybody with that right now. But if we were to like go, okay, back, in Chalice of the Blade, now I got my point back. And the goddess religion, and you know how peaceful it was and coordinated, people lived in beautiful places, nobody paid rent. You know, what was the religion of those people? Well, religion is a little bit to me of a binding word. Look up religio, which I find a little creepy, actually. Only because it's kind of like I hear cuffs being secured with religion, whereas a difference to the way or the Tao one practices. And so if we look back, you know, the religion or the belief system of the times that we, you know, find these beautiful civilizations and goddess worship and equality of the sexes was largely what we now call Gnostic. They were the mystery teachings. And the original mystery teachings. And so that's why you see goddess reverence, because the Sophianic narrative would take you to that reverence. And of course, the real old, and again, what I'm referring to is, and we see evidence of it, the evidence is what science calls the Venus figurines. They're not Venus, they're the Earth Mother. They're our Divine Mother. They're representations of Sophia. So when we get into the Nag Hammadi text and we see all the confusion, we realize that certainly some serious centuries have happened between that kind of paradise world and the world of misery that we find in the Nag Hammadi texts. Get me off of this world, you know. And that's the other thing is, in the translations, are they using the word earth or are they using the world? I don't want off of this earth. I want out of this world. But I realize that the only way out of this world is together. by calling bullshit on the world and re-embracing the earth. So by the time we get to the Nag Hammadi codices, the confusion of living in a dysfunctional world is really showing up. It's showing up in the writings. And the fact that the people who wrote these were not initiates is very clear. Initiates wouldn't be telling multiple variations of the same story. They also wouldn't be confusing their cosmologies. I would say Fundy Christians represent a breakaway from, this is talking to you, Darcy. The Fundy Christians, the Fundy Christians are not a brain trust. They occupy a unique, they take care of a portion of society that is not known for thinking in the abstract. We'll put it that way. So for me, the whole UFO thing, I'm a little bit all over the place. The whole UFO thing for me is a big reminder to those of us human animals that if we're going to deal with them, we're going to need to know how to deal with each other. And one of the things that planetary Tantra is alerting everybody to is there is a control system on this planet. And it goes back to some fairly ancient priesthoods. And the interesting thing is how the priests have used the kings and queens. The kings and queens are set up to kind of, you give the orders, whatever, okay? But kings and queens are set up as divine representatives, okay? And the intercessors of all this divinity is the priest class. Righteousness is a proper trigger, Darcy. Righteousness is a dirty word to us planetary tantrikas. And it goes with holy and holiness. Priests report to no one, BB. See, that's it. The priests are the real brains behind the operation. Kings and queens are there to take the outrageous slings and arrows in many ways. But of course they have their Praetorian guards. But it's the priests that really shape. They are the ones who interpret the divine for the divine rulers. That's one of the names Fox and Drake, by their own description. The reason any gods would fight over the humans is because the Earth human animal is the focus of the galactic experiment. And we're something to be controlled because of our potential and what our destiny is. And our potential is so great that even can keep maintaining some control over us is quite a feat of magic. Saroth, with Gnosis, I believe we can. But that only works at the personal level. But when other people have kind of had that experience and then they find that they have the same perception, well, then you have the making of something. for myself, like the gnosis about, what is life about? What would afterlife be about? I'm living my life on my gnosis, and I will use crossing over as the checking out of my hypothesis of my gnosis. So my gnosis is important to me because that is informing my actions and the decisions I make now. That should have some follow through and follow, over. And I think we should, gnosis is dynamic because there's always new data coming. So the gnosis, there can be an expansion of gnosis. There could even be a ripping up and reinstalling. It's okay to be incorrect. But the thing is to stand in one's gnosis. Live your life from your gnosis. Live one's life in a way that when they get to the afterlife, they get to confirm or not that the gnosis they had about what this all is plays out. We get to check it in the afterlife. And so for me, gnosis is serious because it's going to carry over into the afterlife. So this isn't guesswork. My gnosis is not guesswork. My gnosis is a stand. And I think all gnosis should be a stand. And you can explain, one should be able to explain where they stand and why. What you're saying, Sarah, I'm willing to take it to the afterlife with me. So, so the experiment, my own personal experiment, all our own personal experiments can, start the moment we say, okay, this is my gnosis, and I'm living my life now as a continuum to becoming an ancestor. PayPal to me is one. I think I have, as long as if you're making big trouble in the matrix, PayPal can be a little bit crummy. But I've dealt with PayPal now for years, including having my my bank account hooked up to it. So you can take money from your bank account, put in PayPal, or vice versa. Never had a problem. It's speedy, cheap, and it is the least greedy. Like as a middleman, so to speak, like a cyber middleman, when it comes to somebody else sending funds to somebody else, it's the cheapest game in town. Then when it comes from me to taking what the huge portion that I get of it and put it into my bank account where I have access to it, there's no charge at all. So PayPal for me, amongst us people who are trying to help each other out, is the one where when we help each other out, we get the most bang. In other words, when you send something to another person, they get almost all of it. But thank you for the thought, La Gata Blanca. I could certainly use it. I have a cold house because I don't know how to currently come up with the extra. I have to, if I can keep a room warm, the most important thing is keeping the rent up. So I have my priorities. But I find PayPal really, really easy to work with. Very user-friendly. Where, like, if I were to enable, like, live chats, I could just click a box and somebody could just donate to me. First of all, I'd have to hook up that system. But also, whatever, like, if somebody gives me $10, I'll get 7 of it, and they'll keep 3 of it. Where if somebody sends me $10 in PayPal, I will. I think PayPal keeps, I don't know, like 40 cents of it. Less than 40 cents. basically they keep like I think they take like 3.93 cents of every dollar. Anyway, I don't want to, but thank you. Much of the desire to assist is greatly appreciated. La Gata Blanca. Yeah, it is a huge difference. And Patreon also takes a fairly good hit. I understand why people go for it, because it is easy. By enabling chat in the live stream, people can be impulsed. I see sometimes speakers will say something that really moves somebody, and somebody suddenly goes, I want to help this person, and it's right there for them. So you can get that impulse. But it's taking a stand. You know, it's not like I have no avenues to for assistance to myself. I just don't have them all open because I don't want to encourage what I consider to be greedy behavior. I don't want us trying to help each other out to be taken advantage of. And I don't want to make use of what marketing sees. So, you know, if you have live chat, people will give you impulse money. Say something that makes them feel good, and they'll probably send you a few bucks. You know, somebody might go, "Oh, I really love that idea." Instead of having to type that in, they can hit a number. I understand that impulse, and I don't. A good idea stays with one and doesn't have to be neat to carry out an impulse. Hello, Doc. And I certainly, when it comes to UFOs, the last thing I want is a paranoid control freak government being the interface between the people and visitors. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about MUFON, but, you know, has MUFON in any way kind of tried to set itself up where it represents at least a consensus of a portion of people who are interested in UFOs, a community of what they would want? And are they informing the people who follow what they do of the limitations of what visitors can do with sovereigns when the sovereigns recognize a certain section of people claiming to be humans, at least, as their leaders? You know, even like in America, you know, you have all these Congress people and Senate people that are called the leaders. They're representatives. They're not leaders. And that's one of the things Max Egan is really good at constantly reminding. All of these people get paid from our taxes, which means, and the reason they're paid from the taxes is because they work for us. Now, of course, in there, you know, we should leave them the dignity to conduct themselves with some autonomy in their appointments. But ultimately, to me, that autonomy should only hold provided they're representing those that sent them. Okay, Zarathustra. So I don't know if I forgot to greet you, but I'll say goodbye for now. But I don't know. I kind of, going into the chat, I lose my train of thought. Bad for me. My bad. But, you know, again, I was kind of inspired by this. First of all, I've never really talked about UFOs very much. I consider them a distraction. To me, they're a distraction because we haven't figured out who we are that are greeting them. I mean, you know, are we all independent agents, or do we represent each other in any of these engagements? I mean, are we each other's keepers, or are we on our own? I know the government would like us to think we're on our own. Unless they give an order, then they want us to do it together. Oh yeah, I mean, I think a huge amount of the hardware UFOs are our own. There clearly seem to be certain manifestations that look like they're kind of got a plasma aspect to them. And it is also, you know, in the as the panspermia that is part of any genetic package unfolds, and in, you know, and even in the case where it's meant to have an ultimate unfoldment in an anthropine species, like a human-like species. Hello, Oswald. Oh, I better not. If I'm going to try and keep a thought, I guess I probably have to stay out of the chat just for a little bit, because I keep on good stuff going on in there, but it's a little tangential. So yeah, in the ultimate unfolding. So I'm certainly open that prior to the full development of an anthropic species on the Earth, that there could have been some sentient reptilian forms. And I think some of the stories, there might be reports, there could be stories or reports of stories about, let's say, a sentient reptilian race, not race, a species living inside the Earth. Now, I'm all for the honeycombed Earth. Seems to be there's quite a lot of interior space. And so I don't really have at least I don't have an intellectual problem with thinking, oh, you know, some sentience in another morphology, in this case a reptilian morphology, could have arisen, and this would have been prior to the mind virus that has so ruined the human species, and that them retreating underground when the virus really started getting rampant. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I see some of the figurines from South America, and the ones that I find particularly fascinating are the ones that show a human animal riding a dinosaur type of animal. So there's two challenges or points of interest. One is, I guess, the coexistence of a species that has been claimed by academia to have been extinct for millions of years. You know, the cohabitation of humans with a dinosaur, okay? That's one anomaly. But the other anomaly is, at least in the artistic depictions, are humans riding a stegosaurus or a brontosaurus like it was a horse. In other words, the size of it. We have one idea of the size of a brontosaurus or a stegosaurus and the size of a modern human. So the depictions we see of humans riding these dinosaurs the way they do is either an artistic rendition, you know, complete fantastic artistic rendition. The dinosaurs are smaller, or the human animal was a lot larger. Or perhaps a little bit of a smaller dinosaur and a larger human. Possibility. But to me, what it does speak about is cooperation or peaceful coexistence with species. Yeah, they have some ones where they kind of show a dinosaur eating somebody, or that might be more art. I forget, but you know, they have them all. But once again, you know, you could have a rendition of a lion eating somebody. We do share the planet with lions. but to me, when I see this, this kind of coexistence, it kind of goes back to pagan or pre-sky god religions, where this was the earth. Everything on the earth was part of our relations. We're relatives. Do relatives fight? Yeah, but they still maintain, they're still families. They're still relatives. And I can see that once the biophobic nature of the demiurge started showing up big time. Of course, swords and spears helped enormously to spread an ideology. Oh, here's a good idea. You accept my ideology or I cut your head off. Sound like a good idea? We thought so too. So I just, even with, like I said, like depictions of dinosaurs and humans kind of interacting, just speaks to a time when this planet, this earth, was understood for the being it was, and all the beings on the earth understood themselves as sovereigns in their own right. And it was for us to work it out with each other, even at a across species. And I really feel that the only effective way of dealing with people who are not natives of the earth is for earth natives to see themselves as earth natives, with an earth native story and an earth native cosmology. Where we understand why before the coming of the demiurgic religions, why the ancestors were so important, because we were part of a continuum. We weren't siphoned off to some heaven or hell, or consigned to some bardo to twiddle our thumbs. We were part of a dynamic continuum, whether we were in the flesh or not. The world that the shamans access is part of the continuum, and is why information from that side is relevant here, because it's a continuum. And to be part of that continuum, to be in gnosis of that continuum, to me is the consciousness that is required for us to interface with UFO occupants correctly. And I think our DNA, I think that the DNA that we once had has been corrupted. I think some of the other creation stories, like the Anunnaki and the biblical one, I think are pointing at an interloping species with degraded DNA. But I won't pursue that too far, because it's kind of stepping out of the Sophianic narrative, even though I think there's a complement to it, because it doesn't disturb the narrative, keeps the narrative intact. But the original DNA arrangement remains latent. In other words, even if there's been corruption, the original arrangement remains latent and in many ways active. To me, to best correct the DNA is to enter the dreaming. Within the dreaming, the epigenetic repair and even beyond, because the Anthropos 10, to bring the Anthropos 10 back to its original arrangement, DNA arrangement, would be repair. But there's a destiny for the Anthropos to go to Anthropos 11. So both the repair and further progress is done through the dreaming, by being in the dreaming, understanding the narrative of the dreaming, and the sovereignty that comes with understanding that dreaming and inserting oneself into it. So I think that was about kind of what I had. I just wanted to speak a little bit on UFOs. Again, you know, listening to Richard Dolan speak is never a waste of time, because he brings good research, and he's bringing a historical perspective. I mean, the 20th century history is certainly one part of it, but there's, as even artwork seems to reveal, there's been action in our skies for a long time. We live in a galaxy with a lot of other beings. And I think interacting with other beings is wonderful, but they're looking to interact on a planetary level. And until we, the human animal, achieves a planetary level of sovereignty, there's room for a lot of shenanigans. And to me, even some of the indigenous tales seem to show signs of what I would think is misrepresentation by those who have had past interactions with the Anthropos. It would appear that not all other non-sovereigns, appears that some of them either have a misunderstanding or they're deceivers. I'm willing to cut them some slack because they're Anthropos 9, we're Anthropos 10. So there's a reason why in the Plurilomic Center the experiment with the Anthropos, as it had gone through 9 iterations, was looking a little bit poor. We, the Earth human, represent Anthropos 10. This is where the experiment kind of demonstrates itself that the upgrade was a success, or the whole thing probably didn't work out so well. So anyway, that'll be my brew. That's the brew I'm serving tonight. No, Saroth. On the Earth, there's only 10s. The Earth only has 10s. If there's like Anthropine Pleiadians, there would be 9s. Okay, so yeah, when I speak of a genetic corruption like that, that I think is being hinted at in both the biblical and Anunnaki creation stories, that is a tinkering with Anthropos 10. Anthropos 10 was not useful to them. It was wild. It was wise. And it didn't need any stinking rulers. So I think there was a need to create some, kind of like a counterfeit. You know, it's supposed to be a $100 bill that gets used, but doesn't have any value backing it. Its value is based on its ability to mimic the real thing. And then get mixed in to the real system. And before you know it, it's kind of lost and it's diluted the real value. Are they going away? I'm not sure who you mean by they, but if you're talking about the problem, they'll have to be shown the door. At least initially. I mean, you have to know, they're going to have to know that the Anthropos has awoken. And currently, they don't. From my perspective, the awakening is going rather slow. But obviously, because they're so few in number, they're very few in number, they have some concerns over even what's going on right now. And if I were them, I would be concerned. I wrote a song about it called Go to Your Room. The rulers will go away when we stopped accepting rule. I mean, anarchy means without rulers. It's not, doesn't mean without agreements and ways and culture. It just means these ones that seem to arrive out of nowhere, always with enforcement to set up rules. And that's how the rules run, through enforcement, not agreements. Our way is through agreements, not enforcement. There's enough negative feedback from stepping outside the way, from doing things in error, that constitutes its own correction. Because Panatya Tantra is about correction, not about punishment. Removing a pathogen is not punishing the pathogen, it's correcting the wholesome environment. Pathogens do not belong in a wholesome environment. Correction is removing the pathogen. It's not punishment, it's correction. If there was no need to remove the pathogen, it wouldn't be removed. If it didn't represent a threat, there'd be no need to remove it. Okay. Anyway, that's it. I want to quit now before another question comes in. Anyway, thank you all for an impromptu gathering of Mystic Brew. Hope it wasn't too dark. I didn't put any sugar in. And anyway, so much love to you all. Take care of yourselves. Remember wisdom. A wisdom that translates into actions in the world. Wise action. Okay. Tricia. Oh, good to see you again, Tricia. All right. Blessings to you all.